This is Auntie Up, Indigenous women talking about important shit.
Dani te e Jacqueline Nije Quanlin Neshindi Tagish kat inedenis a Eshrachlan Eshma Taan Quachan Tagish Kuchan e Eshrachlan Eshta Kuchan Esh Aguna Dahuedi et e. I'm Christine Genier, coming to you from my homelands on the traditional territory of the Taan-Quechan Council and Kwanlin Dun First Nations, also known as Whitehorse Yukon. Welcome to Auntie Up, the podcast by, for, and about Indigenous women from coast to coast to coast. I'm honored to be one of your guest hosts talking about language. The colonial project of Canada tried to extinguish our languages, but we're not going to let that happen. Before we meet our guests, I want to throw it over to my co-host, Stephanie. Danit E.
Wachayak, misawe, gapatwata, tadishanakasuyan, ananu, nashtamaga, gagashkamau, dudushkikan nesan, musfatri, gishini, tatawaken. Wache, hello, greetings everyone. I introduced myself to you in my Innu Cree language. My home community is on the Mushkegowuk territory of Moose Factory, Ontario. My English name is Stephanie Moses Feletto, and I am honored to be here with you all today. Thank you, Christine, for that beautiful welcome and introduction. Today we are going to be talking about work being done to keep our languages alive. And I'm pretty excited about our guests today. Both incredibly powerful women, Eshkwel, are actively working to keep their language alive through art, through making space, or joining the language table, a people trying to learn.
Well, I've been a big fan of her artwork, admired the work done for Walking with Our Sisters, the art installation of beaded vamps or moccasin tops to raise awareness of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. And now she's building a language immersion culture camp. And just honored to be speaking with this powerhouse today. It is so good to see you. I'm talking about Métis artist Christi Belcourt. Welcome to the show, Christi.
Oh, fancy. It's really nice to be here. Thank you for asking me.
I'm so honored you could join us, Christi.
Hi.
Our other guest is Edna Wigwas, originally from Kishagizagin Anishinabek, but now residing in Thunder Bay.
Edna, welcome. So glad you could join us. Edna is an elder for the Indigenous Peoples Court in Thunder Bay. And when she joins you at the language table, you know you are sitting with knowledge. Welcome, Edna, and it's nice to have you join us on Auntie Up today.
Thank you for inviting me to be part of your group. At the beginning, I didn't really quite understand what was the purpose of it. Yeah, I do speak fluently because my parents have a good foundation in my cultural background. My dad was a hard-working man, so does my mother. I used to go rabbit snaring in the wintertime, or even in springtime, summertime. We'd find the rabbit trails, so that was a great meal that my mom had taught me. My aunts were very fluent as well. My family, I come from a 6 family, and my siblings are all deceased. It's all only me here now. And when I look forward, I always look forward to my day. What am I going to do? What is my plan today? How am I going to accomplish? What do I need to do? Okay, I'll start one thing at a time. So I'd make my bed, get up, wash my face, and begin my day. And take the Creator that it's another day for me to challenge whatever he puts in my path. So to me, that's the way how I have lived for the last 42 years of my life. I've been recovered from the alcoholism. I was over at the residential school. My mom died when I was 11 years old. My dad never allowed me to not speak my language. My language back then was very much important. Even when I went to boarding school, I was told not to speak my language. If I get caught, I'd be punished and stand in a square facing wall just for using my language. But I'm glad that I never lose my language. I am thankful to my dad that he had a lot of knowledge in him that was very much important. Then after going into how he talked to me really good to get into, because I didn't have a mother and my father didn't have skills to teach a woman. And then he said, education is very much important in your future. Also, there will be women taking care of you there that will teach you how to be a woman. That's something that I don't have. That was the preparation he had for me in my future. At that time, I didn't realize it, but as much as I do now. So my father did have a lot of knowledge that he passed it on to me. You know, he taught me about those 7 generations. I thought it was a correct way of living at that time when I was young. So I went ahead and did whatever I want. When I first tasted the alcohol, it was very much affecting. I liked the way how it affected me. I was as big as the next person. You know, I'd be the one to say a last word. Nobody wouldn't shut me up as long as I had that alcohol in me. I was very strong and tough. But when that alcohol wears out of me, then I was just like a little mouse being scared. What did I say? Even to face reality, or even to look out in the window that a person would approach me. You know, what was that about yesterday? Those kind of things that I was afraid of. But after in recovery, and then that's when I realized that I had put something poison in my system that will make me be crazy. And I just didn't care about anything. You know, I didn't listen. You know, I had my poor father that trying to teach me some things, how to live a life without alcohol. But I thought that was the best thing that ever happened back then. That's what I thought, because I was the courageous. I was the smartest, even though I didn't know how to speak English language. But I felt very smart and tough. That's the way how the alcohol affected me. When the time came, my father had passed on, and I am a single parent of 6 children. I got 4 boys and 2 girls, and I was very much afraid. The community padron was pretty much rowdy, and I had to smarten up and put my act together. So what I did, I removed myself from the community back in 1982. Then I was already 4 years sober, and I needed help. I needed to go to meetings. I needed help from my children to raise them. I didn't worry about losing the culture because it was already in me. So when I got settled and waited here in the city, I took them back for 1 month of July. That would be our summer holiday, 1 whole month. And then to last for that whole month that we're being away from the city here. And my boys became really good hunters because they were always in the land. After moving for the last 10 years until my kids were grown up, one by one drop, my package was getting smaller till the last one that I had. So we always had camping. We're always in the nature. Nature is, it's the better connection when you go to the nature. I had learned how to hunt as well, along with my aunt. My aunt was a big part of my life too, as well. We used to trap when the snowfall comes. First snowfall, that's when Martin is good, he used to say. So 2 days later, we'd be out in the bush putting our traps. She taught me how to set a trap. She taught me how to clean the marten. And then when the lake freezes, we'd go up on the lake and then set the net. And the other aunt, cousin, had taught me how to do beadwork. She says, "You have a lot of kids, Edna, and that's not going to be enough what you get each month." So she taught me how to do beadwork. She taught me how to do slippers, and she taught me how to do mitts. And that's been a great benefit, all the teachings that I received from my ancestors. When I think back, I feel rich. I got lots of everything that I can do, Me gutting fish. My boys are fishermen, they're hunters. They bring me some fish. Oh, pack of fish, I'd be standing there cleaning all my fish, cleaning them up, dressing them, putting them in a freezer so that whenever I want to eat traditional food, there I have it. All I have to do is pull out what I had.
We are full of riches when we have this information transferred to us from our matriarchs and our family around us. These are treasures and gems, hidden gems that we are now unearthing in a language revitalization era that we are in now here on this land that people call Canada.
And it's really nice to translate yourself as you use the English language as well. Not in English one word, expensive 10 words, 10 cents word. I call those little long languages don't necessarily mean anything, but you pretty well have to make a sentence in order to understand the word what you're using, because there is no individual word in our language.
Stephanie, we're also joined by Christi Belcourt doing some language immersion camps, which I think definitely different from maybe your weekly courses that you're able to take part in when it works for your job.
Christi, can you share a little bit about why did you start Nimki Aju Gubogang?
Nimki Ajabikong is first of all, I need to clarify, it's not an immersion camp. So that's a kind of a misunderstanding. But Nimki Ajabikong is a camp that we started to build. There's 6 or 7, 8 of us, like-minded individuals that wanted to come together and create a space on the land to do land-based practices, to reinvigorate and put life into some of the things that weren't practiced for many generations, and also to couch all of that within the language, and to have a space where learners can feel surrounded, safe, and supported to learn language. So we started in 2017. A group of us went out onto the land and decided to start to build this camp. In terms of building, it's not just a temporary camp, it's a permanent year-round camp. It's kind of like a little village, actually, rather than a camp. And we've kept it really small. At first, I think we sort of were saying, everybody come. And then after COVID hit, we kind of like tightened things up. And there's 7 of us permanently there. We live out there for the most part. And it's north of Elliott Lake. First of all, my people are Métis, and my ancestry's from the community of Lac Saint Anne. My grandparents and all of their siblings, and my dad's aunties and uncles, his grandparents, everyone in the community were fluent Cree speakers. But I'm living within Anishinaabeg territory, and therefore I'm trying to learn both languages. And this is where I've lived for all my life, is within Anishinaabeg territory. My daughter is half Métis and half Anishinaabe. So we are. So this is how I find myself in this area, learning Anishinaabe and participating in building an Anishinaabe camp. Just to put that into some perspective. With my dad now, what happened to him was when he was about 5 years old, so he spoke the language until about 5. He, as his parents were, my grandparents were fluent speakers. When he went to school, people were making fun of him or whatever, and he was struggling with English. And so his parents made the decision, my grandparents made the decision not to teach him the language and not to speak it in the home anymore. This is a common story across the country. So it's very interesting to be working towards language revitalization and then see the common themes happening across the country, which are that we have a great number of people who lost their language because their parents or grandparents decided not to speak it to them. That's couched in a lot of trauma and shame. And then as they get older, they understand the language sometimes, like my dad, or they have the sounds of the language, but they don't know how to speak the language, or they choose not to. And so we're faced with, across the country, in all of our communities, a steep decline to the point of crisis. Even the languages that they say are strong languages, like Anishinaabe or I can never say that. God, I'm such a bad Cree Cree language. Anyway, the Cree language and Inuktitut and the languages that they consider to be strong are still in very rapid decline, because we're looking at communities where sometimes there are no speakers left. We're looking at communities where maybe there's a population, a small and declining population of elders and first language speakers who speak, but none of the children are speaking. Nobody is speaking to the children in the language and requiring them to answer back in the language. There's a decline in the language in the home. And so we're watching this rapid decline. And at the same time, the pool of language learners is getting larger and larger as the fluent speakers are getting smaller and smaller. So we are facing extreme crisis in our communities with language.
I was just going to, we were talking about before we even started recording how much we enjoy talking about language, our languages, and language revitalization. We've heard from both you, Christi, and Edna about some of the interruptions that happened with generational language transfer as a result of policies put upon us, genocidal and assimilation policies put upon Indigenous people to interrupt that language. And it seems that maybe there's some hesitation to speak to this if you're from outside of the conversation, but this conversation seems to people like us to be necessary because it's a little bit different than, say, I want to learn Spanish as a hobby. There's a lot more information that goes into this. And with that, I would like to ask both of you, how does language connect us to other important facets of our existence, connection to the land and to sovereignty? Let's start with Edna.
You know what? I feel very disconnected here because some of the words that are being said here, I don't understand. I don't understand the Cree word. And to me, it means nothing. Unless if I talk to another person that will understand what I'm saying here so I can develop a conversation. And down-to-earth people are very most honest, and that's where I'm working towards to be that person, to be down-to-earth. I'm almost there, but I still got a lot more to work because I need my connection. When I go into the woods, I feel very connected. I feel the air is warm, and then I have a good sleep with that fresh air as well. So it's very important to be out there. And as you were talking about the healing center, I've always wished to develop a healing center to teach all about Anishinaabe way of living and speaking it as you go along. Because when you speak the language, you speak from your heart, and it gives you a nice feeling. You don't feel any kind of fear or any kind of uncomfortable feeling when you use the language. You feel calm and gentle. But there is times that, there's balance to everything, no matter what you do, And when you speak, you act on what you do. You get the movement from it too as well.
Edna, sorry, thank you. When I'm listening to you, I can, I was raised with my grandmother speaking Cree in Innu, and listening to her, some of the things that she would share with us sometimes it couldn't be translated into English. Are you finding that as well too?
That's why I say that, you have to pretty well make a sentence in order to describe that word, what you want to put into your conversation in your English language. That's why my conversation is so long, because I continuously translate myself as I use the English language. And it took me years, say 40 years, to translate when I started to learn how to read and how to learn what words mean in my language. That's a difficult thing to do. So 40 years of loss of my language, and try to put it into better perspective in the reality today. And
Christi,
language is very...
thank you, Edna. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I've noticed there's a lot of that too. So it almost want to shut me off, and to listen.
And communicating in our format that we're communicating now is a little bit different, because normally what we would be doing is sitting around a table, side by side, sharing a cup of tea, sharing some food, some meacham, having that physical contact to sit together. And this is a different way of communicating, and I can
I used to be made once if an elder starts speaking, I was made to sit quiet and listen. If you listen, is the only way. And you look at the posture side too as well. How honest a person can be. It shows in your expression and the way how you appear to be. And if you appear to be calm, then there's no need to ask questions, because you're covering everything. I've done presentations, and I've made a great success on my presentation. One of it was in McMaster's University regarding adult child of alcoholics. And I asked for questions. There was none. Everything was covered, and ended up having 100% communication. I'm not educated. I've only been promoted grade 6, but I do have a lot of knowledge. I've went through a lot of experience, and I was able to bring them out in reality rather than keeping them in my closet. They said secrets. I have no secret today, I just give it away. And I'm very outspoken.
I think that one of the struggles I've had, especially when it comes to being requested by institutions to come in and bring our ways into the conversation, has been that, especially speaking to time and the discomfort of cutting off our elders and the knowledge that we are asking for, as well as the knowledge that they've asked us to bring. And that leads me as well to asking, when we are asked to bring this to institutional spaces, where they're asking us to have these old ways of speaking be sliced up in this way, is it something that can be transferred? Can we have these conversations in a new communication format like this? Does it even transfer? What do you think, Stephanie?
I hear what you're saying, and Edna, what she has shared with us. I hear her sharing, her teachings for us to listen, to sit and listen, and to be respectful and be mindful of what she's sharing with us, and her ways of knowing of what her family and has taught her. And it's an incredible honor to sit here, to have to hear, those stories of her going out into the land and carrying that with her. And it's incredibly humbling to sit here with you, Edna. And, you shared that connection when you go out and get that. In Cree, we say wabush. And in your language, how would you say rabbit?
Wabus.
Wabus.
Wabus, yeah.
And your last name, Edna Wigwas.
Birch.
Tell me a little bit about your name.
Birch. That's my ancestor grandfather's pagan name. And it was French when the Frenchmen came by to French eyes to give us that treaty. We were picked to use that last name as a Wigwas because Anishinaabe never had no last names before, but they all had individual names. And that's why today we're lost, because we don't know who our relatives are. We were told never to ask for their background because those people were already passed down. They no longer exist. So pick up from here and move on. If you're meant to have this knowledge, it'll come to you by taking good care of yourself. But now that things had changed, it's different now. Because we go and dig in the store and pick the best whatever we can have for supper. But before it wasn't like that. It was fresh all the time. When a hunter goes out, they make sure to bring back something for supper. When they go in the bush, they bring back some wood, some birch to start the fire with. They were never out of anything. My parents, my ancestors. When we went out camping, we didn't have to take very much. They used the nature out there. They used birch bark, to make a tent. They used cedar. They used deer for padding. And they had rabbit blankets. They were so warm. You could sleep 100 below outside. You'd feel so warm you wouldn't feel the cold. And it was so in person. I had a chance to sleep in teepee with my parents and observe what they did. They made fire. They heat up rocks, and then they put it in a tent. By morning, it was nice and warm all through the night. So I knew all those skills. I'm a very skillful person as well, the kind of upbringing I had.
Well, Stephanie, it was an honor to be able to invite Edna and Christi into this conversation with us, but we saw what happened there. This is something, and again, I said I'd been struggling with it. It was one of the struggles I had when invited to indigenize and decolonize media in part of my last job in broadcasting. And then we saw Christi's reaction to it, which was basically, to me, an incredibly beautiful example of a woman walking her talk. The opportunity to just sit and listen to the conversation that we had asked of an elder.
I sat here and we have our scripts and we have our conversation with an intention in our mind where we want the conversation to flow. And it was incredibly humbling to sit here, to listen, and to be told by our elder, Edna, that she said, to reiterate, that she wasn't schooled in our formal education system, but her wealth of knowledge of what she shared of her life in that short little conversation that we were able to have with her, it felt a little bit painful to me because I wanted to listen more. It felt like we need to offer her and those elders and the language speakers more space and to give them the opportunity to speak and to share and for us to listen.
And the discomfort that comes with being corrected in that way, it's good in ways that it did come up like this, because it brings me to where I'm at in my language acquisition. I am incredibly privileged. I come from a place of great privilege that my language mentor and the language holder who has been teaching it to me and with whom I've gone into this intensive work intention with is my own mother. And one of the things I found when I really started directing my intention toward full language acquisition was that I was asking a lot of questions to make it make sense to the language my brain was conditioned in early education, my Anglo brain. And it was my mom, my own Eshma, wanting to slow it down and wanting to slow me down in that gentle way as well. And then it had to land on me. And this is a very clear line. And when I went from just learning the first few sentences and going back and learning them again and going back and learning them again, I could not figure out what that barrier was. But that was it. I was creating my own barrier because I wanted it to make sense in an Anglo mind. And it was not going to work that way. And I realized that when we're children and we're at home and we're surrounded by language, whichever language that is, we're not asking questions about that language. I had to make myself like a child again. We have to make ourselves like children again when we come into these conversations. And remember that we don't know anything about what we're asking about. We're not going to learn until we know that.
I agree. You know, before this episode, I was thinking about my own grandparents and my parents. And, you know, my grandmother worked in the hospital translating for patients on the James Bay coastline that came into the Moose Factory General Hospital for care. And there were times that she said, I don't know how to say that in the English language. And, you know, it was her relationship with them, you know, that she developed, that comfort. And, you know, even at home listening, most of my language is what I can hear, I understand. I was never really comfortable in being able to speak it. And I was scared, I was shy, I was embarrassed. And, but you know, when I'm listening to Elder Edna talking about, you know, when she went out into the bush and she was listening to her grandparents, and when she would go out and snare those waboos in Anishinaabe and wabush in Cree, in my Innu language. It was incredibly passionate and heartfelt about all that and where she wanted us to be able to draw from. And, you know, just being able to sit and listen. And incredibly powerful moment occurred during our recording. And for Christi to gracefully, humbly, respectfully, the loving person that she is for her people and who she is and who she walks as, to respectfully give that space and for us to listen.
Okay. Thank you, Stephanie. been really enjoying hanging out with you, hanging out with all of the aunties, and hanging out with the guests.
I'm looking forward to our next conversation, Christine. It's been an incredible pleasure to sit with the aunties, and I look forward to more conversations, and I encourage everyone to follow us on our social media for more episodes upcoming. And Eskimo win.
Auntie Up is produced by Jolene Banning, Kim Wheeler, and Sam Makwa for Makwa Creative. Our executive producer is Tanya Talaga. Our partner is Antica Productions. Auntie Up is sponsored by No History and Anna Mickey, Indigenous innovation since 2003. Follow and like us on socials at Auntie Up Podcast on Facebook, Auntie.up on Instagram, and Auntie Up 1 on Twitter.